Good evening and thank you for watching KTN News. My name is Dennis Aseto and welcome to this edition of Climate Change, your #1 premier show on matters climate and how best we can take care of what we have today in order to be able to say that the future looks bright based on the fact that climate change continues to ravage the world over endless rain, drought, cyclones, and name them all. But right here on climate change, we continue to converse through different issues, different subjects on matters climate change, and try to find solutions to the issues that you continue to face on a daily basis. Today, we talk about the matters to do with the youth and the representation on matters climate change. Do they have a seat on the actions that we need to have, or are the youth just there to be seen and not to be heard? I shall be having that conversation a little bit later with Shampa Annie with matters climate change a little bit later. She is a youth climate change activist, but that a little bit later. Now, climate change has greatly affected the pastoral women and children aged 0 to 5 years of age in terms of malnutrition. Now, a reason why there is need to capacity build the community on how to utilize their farmlands through agroforestry. Now, Africa Population and Health Research Center survey reveals that the livestock the community were dependent on were killed by the drought, and that this has attributed to severe malnutrition of women and children aged 0 to 5 years of age. Esther Anuno from Africa Population Health and Research Center said that climate change has affected the health of women and children. Gabriel Lenegwesi, Samburu County Deputy Governor, said as the county government, they are working to support communities to adapt to the global climate change by providing them with camels and heifers that are drought resistant and can produce sufficient milk to improve nutrition status of both children and women.
Wale ambao ni watafiti ambayo wamepata kwamba sana hasa akina mama na watoto wachanga chini ya umri wa miaka 5 ni wale ambao wanakuanga na madhara yanawafikia kwa sana. Kwa hivyo ni muhimu kwetu kukuja hapa katika Samburu ili tufanye utafiti ili kuelewa ni kipi ama ni chanzo kipi kile kinatokana na madhara ya hali ya afa.
We're very happy to be a partner within. We're bringing information on land health, landscape health, as was mentioned by the University of Nairobi, as well as knowledge on food portfolios, where we bring food trees that produce fruit and nuts and leaves, with other crops like pulses, vegetables, livestock, and develop portfolios that can bring nutritious, micronutrient-dense foods throughout the year.
And when I say agroecology, I mean agriculture that does not do harm to our environment. So we want to go back to our roots. We want to promote indigenous food, indigenous seeds, and ensure our people are not sleeping hungry.
As a county government, we are going to complement and leverage the situation and this position to make sure we'll give them, first of all, we'll give them a very conducive environment. We'll offer them the support they deserve. And also since you can see behind me, I have the senior officers from the county government and even the national government here. That shows we are very serious in what we are doing.
And as one way of supporting environmentalists from Kajiado West constituency, Attorney General Justin Muturi has insisted on the need for environmentalists to have enough tree seedlings, not only as a conservation venture, but as an economic activity as well. Now, the AG said that the good relationship between the residents and forestry officers, KFS, has resulted to great success in environment conservation.
Sisi imetuboost ka vijana wa community. Kwanza first vijana wengi wenye wako kwa hii kazi wenye waliselektiwa, and Wengi walikuwa kwa mihadarati, drugs and substances, but sasa wametoka. Sasa ni kazi wanafanya.
Tunaambiwa tutengeneza own nurseries. We get the nurseries, but tunakosa watu wa kununua hizo miti. Kwa hivyo tutaomba kwamba serikali iweze kuweka into practice whatever they say. If we have those nurseries at each ward, at least when there's an event, they consider wale ambao localities wa pale waweze kuwauzia zile miti. Miti zisitoke kule nje kuja kupandwa within the localities ambao tunaishi.
It has always been a clarion call, both from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and from the entire government, that in places where local communities have been growing seedlings, the government should also go out of its way to also help them monetize their efforts. So it is that collaboration that has been going on, and it will continue. It is not that we don't want to, but you know, in some cases, on occasions, sometimes you find you don't have the proper trees. So that's why we go to other places to go and procure.
Very well now, and the fight for a better world that is climate sensitive is an ongoing discourse, one that calls for the involvement of every aspect of the society. The youth have emerged as an important part of climate change conversations and solutions. But even as we talk about involvement and inclusion, just what is the place of the youth? In studio with me is Shampi Anna, a climate activist and a youth that matters. Shampi, welcome to KTN News. Long time I've been trying to have you on this show, but for some weird reason, you're always fighting for climate change outside the country, but finally you're here. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And
I'm so
let's
glad
just
to be here.
go straight into it. As we talk about matters to do with climate change, the voice of the youth comes out as one that for a very long time has been ignored. Rather, the youth have been left to be seen and not be heard. But it is turning out to be that the youth are equally important in conversations to do with climate change. Therefore, as we move forward, even in matters to do with climate change and the actions that we need to put in place, what is the position of the youth in such conversations?
So, Dennis, first of all, why are the youth important? The ones that are in this space currently, majority of them are not youth. When they exit, who is going to replace them? The youth. This therefore means that there is need to invest in the youth and to engage them, not just for them to tick boxes and to just be seen or just making them seem as if they're participating, but to meaningfully engage them. The position of the youth right now, as we can see in all other aspects, the revolution of the Gen Z, you know, some of the millennials also joining the Gen, actually most of the millennials also joining the Gen Zs. This is one of the signs that should tell you that the youth actually want to be involved. They want to be involved meaningfully. If you have a conversation with the youth, I being one of them, we sit, we learn, we see, we have felt this adverse weather effect, especially from me coming from a region that is, you know, considered to be in the arid region. We have felt the brunt of climate change. And even in this space, the position of the youth still remains that we have something to bring on the table. That even if they want to involve us, it should not be ticking boxes, as I've said. We have something to say, we have something to give, and we have room for improvement. In fact, we have room for learning. And the best thing they could do to us is to empower us, even with education and with knowledge, and to be compassionate with us. It is true, there are times where, you know, we have been a bit stubborn, but it helps to also, you know, see us as just fellow human beings who want to, we are seeking relevance in this space, and we want to contribute positively to our planet.
Now, as we approach the COP29, which will be in Baku, there is a conversation on the youth voice being heard in these COPs. COP28 as well, there was a conversation about the presence of the youth. We know at the Africa Climate Summit that happened in Nairobi, the youth had a podium, they presented their issues. And now, even as we just talk about locally on the youth meeting one-on-one with, say, the president, the cabinet secretary, and discuss matters to do with climate change and their involvement. We've not seen that happen. Therefore, as we move forward, how should we position ourselves such that we are heard?
I was privileged to be part of the COP28. Since I was part of the civil society, I was with PACJA at that time, I got the observer badge. And when I got into the negotiation rooms, my only part was to observe. And from what I observed, and of course I discussed with all others who've been attending, is also what they have been observing, that most of the youth are not coming with the parties, are not coming with the governments. Therefore, they're not in a good place to negotiate. Most of them are actually observers. And so this leaves us out in terms of wanting to contribute meaningfully. Because even if you look at the number of youth negotiators, let's just leave Africa alone. In Kenya, I would be surprised if you tell me that they amount to even 10, considering the delegation that goes to the COPs. So for me, it is kind of a sad situation because I'm not sure this thing is going to be improved. Even if we say that youth are going to be involved meaningfully in the conference of parties and they're going to be given chances to negotiate, the bigger question becomes, do we have the negotiation skills? Do we have the language that it takes to sit down there and try and negotiate? Because I was sitting and I was telling myself, oh really, I really have something to say about this, but how will I go about it? Because I realized that there is a deficit in skill required for me to participate meaningfully, that is in terms of negotiations. And even more disadvantaging to us is that when you look at the difference between the Global South delegates and the Global North delegates, it's a huge difference. The Global North has invested in, even they have legal personnel within the room, even the way they're presenting themselves, you can tell that these people were well prepared. Even us in the Global South, we do to a very good extent, I'd say we are trying, but in terms of youth representation, there is a huge, there's not good representation, and in order for there to be good representation, there has to be people trained in negotiations, but are they? They're not. And even worse, there are some rooms sometimes you would have like an overflow. When you have an overflow, that is just meaning the room has been filled, people have to be locked out of that session. And most of the time, it is the people that have the observer state badges. Who are these people? Mostly youth, so you're locked out of the observer. You're left to view it from, ni kama unachungulia kwa dirisha, just watching things from the window and not really being there. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of skills, a lot of education that needs to be done in order for us to participate meaningfully on the global level in regards to Conference of Parties.
And you've mentioned something in terms of skill and the need to invest in training and all this, pretty much just making the youth ready even in these conversations. And this therefore brings about the willingness or the intentionality from, say, the government and all the stakeholders in making sure that the knowledge that they have is actually transferred to the next generation. And as we speak right now, you say at Conference of Parties, the youth go there as observers, do not have the skill pretty much to just engage or even negotiate, which begs the question, therefore, are our governments, are our civil society groups investing in the youth to have them ready for such Conference of Parties?
Okay. Being in this climate space, rather civil society space specifically on matters to do with climate change, I have been privileged to have engaged with Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. This is one organization I would vouch for, I would talk for every other time. They usually have a yearly program. It's called Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice. They don't just train young Kenyans, but they train young Africans, and even beyond Africa. In fact, young climate activists, majorly focusing on Africa, they take you through a 2-week intense course on what you need to do while you're in this space, how you need to present yourself, what are the facts that are there on the ground, how do you make yourself relevant in this space, and how do you benefit your community. So this is just one of the organizations that are doing such kinds of work in terms of education and capacity building. So I'd say when it comes to this space, civil society is really doing its best, because this is just one of the organizations that's doing this work. There are many, many more, yeah? But when it comes to the government, I'd say there needs to be some improvement. And the way I usually see it, the biggest contribution that government can make in terms of improvement when it comes to education and capacity building is through the curriculum. How is it that we go through primary school, high school, university? Yani, if you did not take a course in university that's related to environment or something to do with climate justice, you will never really get to know about these things, because no one is going to teach you about the situation of the international financial institutions when it comes to climate finance. No one is going to teach you adaptation and mitigation, loss and damage. Who is going to explain that to you? So for me, it's so it's so ironic that we end up graduating, you know, masters, we become even doctors, we become all that. But then this enemy, this crisis of our era that we are fighting with right now is affecting everyone. But there's so little information in our academia. So for me, one of the ways that the government could really do or make a significant contribution is putting these crucial things in the education system and teaching them in truth. Even if they're putting it in terms of history, they teach any pure truth. We want to know who is guilty, who is not, who has the responsibility to do what, and what can we do to help fight this crisis.
And you've talked about capacity building and also the curriculum. And as we speak right now, we have the CBC that tends to include school-going children into a hands-on approach in matters to do with, say, climate change, planting trees and all these things. But we find that there is a generation that didn't go through such. We'd say the Gen Zs right now were never included in such conversations. We know the late President Daniel Moi used to say, cut one tree, plant a single tree. But we know we know where we are today with that. Therefore, in terms of just making sure that not only it is in curriculum, but Kenyans as well just understand the risk that we face if we do not deal with climate change heads on. Just how should we package this information to make sure that we're not only talking about the civil rights activists, journalists who are covering climate change, or the Ministry of Environment, but the entire republic, 55 million of us, speaking the same language on the need to address climate change, because it is a risk that we face every single day.
Yeah. For me, I believe that education and capacity building is a huge tool, and it will contribute to the success. Even looking at government as a whole, not just the Gen Zs were left out in terms of educational curriculum, even the older generation were also left out, because there are some people working in crucial departments in government, but they do not really, they cannot really explain these things. Even them, things like climate justice seem like a very abstract, an abstract concept, you know. So even them, there is need for them to have education. One of the other problems that we have as a country and even as a continent is that there is huge policy incoherence. It is very evident and it has been proven that our problem in Africa is not mitigation, it is adaptation. Because when it comes to emission, the percentage that we contribute to the planet is not as significant as what is being contributed to the global north. This therefore means that climate change is inevitable, that even for the next 20 years, if the whole of Africa did nothing to contribute to the emissions, we would still be facing the same consequences. This therefore means that attention should go to adaptation, building resilience on how to cope with this climate change. But look at our NDCs, look at our National Adaptation Plus, look at our budgetary allocation. Over 70% is being allocated to activities relating to mitigation, and the rest is adaptation. We have misplaced priorities, policy incoherence. For me, this usually just tells me, when I look at it, it tells me that someone somewhere does not understand what our needs are. Someone somewhere needs some education. So also there needs to be education. Here on the ground, we do our best to educate each other. As I've said, programs like Nairobi Summer School is like also a trainer of trainers program. They train us to also go and be trainers in our respective communities. But it is not enough if everyone is not involved and does not push themselves to want to seek knowledge. And there's this quote that really usually motivates me in this space, to want to do better for the next generation, that the world is reaching a tipping point beyond which climate change may be irreversible. And if this happens, we risk denying the future generations the right to a healthy and sustainable planet. And it can't be me sitting and just not being involved in this space. We have to secure the future generations.
And there's this phrase that is going all over right now because of the Gen Zs, and it is all about anguka nayo. You know? So on matters climate change as well, pretty much if we relate to that phrase is we all have to come together and anguka nayo. You know, we have to anguka with it and make sure that we find solutions on matters climate change.
Yes.
But you mentioned something to do with the civil society is pulling its weight in making sure that the youth are trained. But there's always the challenge of resources, which then brings forth the government to also assist in such matters. We know the government has done a lot with regard to the FLOCA money that is there in making sure that we fight our own challenges. But like you said, there is misplaced priority on whether we should go adaptation or mitigation. And you say someone somewhere does not understand what our priorities are. So say from the civil society groups or from the youth who understand what it is we need, have we had an opportunity to just sit with the powers that be, the ministry, to advise them on what our priorities should?
How do I answer this question? See, I'm not the first one to be even in such an interview to make such a statement that there is misplaced priorities. So, and there are also other youths that are working in similar spaces that have had the pleasure, especially, you know, Kenya hosted the African Climate Summit, and there was also a section for the African Youth Climate Assembly. The group of youth that was handling this section, I would say, have a proper understanding of what really are our needs. And I am in the know that they have sat down with the relevant ministries and have probably brought about this conversation. I, as a person, have not had the chance to sit down with these people to maybe try and understand what's going on. But with them, I don't know, not unless they have not, because for me, I find it to be very difficult if people that have actually gotten the chance to speak to the relevant authorities have not raised this question. I was working with the Kenya Young Parliamentarian Association. They had taken me through a program where we were being trained by African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, basically reviewing how to review budget policy statements and looking at crucial sectors. I was looking at the environment and climate change sector. And looking at it is basically reviewing the budgetary allocation. And I was just surprised that in these sectors, the money that goes into investments, the money that goes into recurring expenditure, salaries and what needs in the office, is more than double of what goes into the investments. And even the money that has been allocated for investments, we still ask ourselves, where are these investments? Like who out there knows about these successful investments that have been, have been successfully carried out by the government? The FLOCA program, I will commend, especially a county like Makueni County. They are implementing it beautifully, and it is my hope that all other counties will do it. But then, at that level of FLOCA, I'd say things kind of, have hope at that devolved system. But nationally, for me, it just seemed, just looking at the budget policy statement alone, for me, it just seemed as if something is not right somewhere. We had an opportunity to sit with some of the parliament members, but these are just some of them. When things are being passed, like all of them need to be in one room in order to pass some of these laws. So I actually have the same question. Like, I really would like to have such a chance and to have such a conversation and just understand what's going on, what's happening, why aren't we focusing on the priorities that we should be focusing on? Yeah, and as you continue to ask those questions, I think the current Gen Z would ask, kwani nini na happen to involve. Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think let's take a short commercial break, and when we come back, let's see how the youth can be involved in these conversations, have a seat at the table, be able to advise, and equally just have a say and be able to move forward and together win this fight. See you after this short commercial break.